Hey friend, welcome back to Hypothyroid Chef. I'm Ginny Mahar, your thyroid health and cooking coach and the author of the Thyroid30 Cookbook. Today we're making one of my all-time favorite comfort foods for fall and winter, pumpkin sage macaroni and cheese with a crispy shallot topping. It's luscious and creamy, sweet and savory, gluten-free, dairy-free, and just a nutrient-dense bowl of goodness. It's also one of the few ways that I can get my son to eat winter squash. I can't wait to share this delicious, family-friendly fall recipe with you, so let's dig in. All right, this recipe looks decadent, but it's also secretly packed with thyroid-loving ingredients. Let's take a look at the ingredients before we get cooking. So winter squash is loaded with vitamin A, vitamin C, B6, potassium, fiber, all things that are helpful for us as thyroid thrivers. Today I'm going to use this kabocha squash that I roasted last night. It's a green-skinned variety of Japanese pumpkin and it tastes so amazing. But you can really use any kind of winter squash that's in that pumpkin family, so kind of shaped in that round squatty shape. So like sunshine squash or sugar pie pumpkin, or if you want to save time, even canned pumpkin will do here. To add a creamy element, we're going to use coconut milk, which gives us some of those healthy MCT fats that help us with energy and stable blood sugar. I'm also going to add a bit of dairy-free cream cheese for extra richness. And to give it some savory, cheesy flavor without the use of dairy, we're using nutritional yeast. So this is loaded with B vitamins, minerals, and it gives it this kind of Parmesan-like umami. We'll also be using some chicken bone broth to loosen the sauce and add another nourishing, savory element that's also loaded with gut-supporting collagen and minerals. And like a traditional macaroni and cheese, we're also going to make a roux to thicken the sauce. And so my favorite gluten-free flour for that purpose, and one that behaves, I think, a lot like regular flour in that application, is cassava flour. And all of this comes together into just the most velvety, gorgeous, dairy-free cheese sauce. And it is different than your typical mac and cheese. We're not trying to recreate that here, but this combination of flavors and the wholesomeness of the squash just really works. You're also going to need your favorite gluten or grain-free pasta. For this dish, I really like these jovial organic brown rice gluten-free elbows. But if you need it to be grain-free, you could also use something like a cassava pasta. And then to add tons of flavor, we're going to be using some fresh sage leaves, some aromatic spices like cloves, nutmeg, and cinnamon. And then we'll create this crispy shallot topping. So you'll need shallots, and we'll crisp those up in some ghee. Ghee is just a type of clarified butter that is considered dairy-free. Now, just a note, the printable recipe for this, which I've linked to in the video description, makes a pretty big batch, 6 servings, maybe even 8 as a side. So I'm just going to demo a half batch today. So if you do grab that printable recipe, just know that it's going to make twice the amount that you'll see here today. I've got some really fun flavor boosting techniques that I'm going to share with you today, so let's go ahead and get cooking. First, I'm going to get some water heating up for the pasta, and while that's getting going, we can get started on the sauce. So first I'm going to melt a couple tablespoons of ghee in a small saucepan, and once that's hot, we'll add the shallots. We want to basically fry them until they're nice and golden brown and crisp. This is going to be our crispy shallot topping, and it adds so much flavor. Not to mention, we're also going to be infusing this ghee that we're going to then use to make our sauce with for that rich shallot flavor. So once that's good and hot, we'll go ahead and add our shallots. And one thing with caramelization, especially when you're cooking at higher temperatures, is that it can take a while to start browning, but then once it does, it goes pretty quickly. So once you start to see some color on these, you really want to kind of babysit them and make sure that they're not going to burn. So I actually recommend pulling them out of the oil with a slotted spoon when they're just a notch less brown than you want them to be, because they brown up so quick at that point, and if they scorch, they'll become a bit bitter. So this takes a little bit of patience, but it's worth it. Okay, so those are sizzling, our water's boiling. We'll go ahead and get our pasta going. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt to the water. And when you're cooking pasta, especially gluten-free pasta, you really want a good amount of water. That's just the best way to get, nice separate noodles that aren't mushy or clumpy or don't have too much like starchy coating on them. That can be one sort of tricky thing when you're cooking rice pasta is that once it's done, it can go from like perfectly done and toothsome and tender to overcooked and mushy and almost like falling apart pretty quickly. So this is another instance where we want to, pull them just before they're like perfectly done, because they are going to, continue to cook a little bit and absorb more moisture once we add our sauce. I also recommend stirring your rice pasta a lot during cooking so that it doesn't clump together. All right, we're just starting to see some nice color on these shallots, so these should be done pretty quickly here. I'm gonna keep a close eye on them because this is where they can really go from perfect to scorched quickly. And if you need to, just turning your heat down a little bit will kind of widen that window of the perfect degree of doneness. So, you don't have to stress about it or anything. You can always slow things down if you need to. That's something I do often when I'm doing things like this. So I've got my slotted spoon here, ready to go, ready to pull these. And these are looking just about perfect. All right, so we're gonna use that slotted spoon to pull these out of the ghee. Now our ghee is all nice and infused with those delicious shallot flavors. And we've got some really nice crispy caramelized shallots here. These smell and taste so amazing. They're used in a lot of different cuisines, like Vietnamese cuisine uses a lot of caramelized shallot, and it's just one of those amazing flavor boosters. Now, another little trick with these is you want to season them up while they're still hot. That's going to help the salt stick to them. All right, we'll set these aside till we're ready to eat. All right, our pasta is just about done. One little trick that I recommend doing with recipes like this is to set aside a little bit of the pasta cooking water. That way, just in case your sauce starts to get a little bit dry as moisture evaporates, maybe it starts to clump up a little bit, you can always loosen it with some of that starchy pasta water. That'll just make it nice and silky. It has a little bit of flavor to it, subtle, but just a nice thing to have on hand just in case. We'll go ahead and check these, make sure they're just right. All right, we're there, so we'll go ahead and drain these and then finish our sauce. I'm just gonna turn the heat back on with our ghee and get going on our sauce. So with this shallot infused ghee, we're gonna go ahead and whisk in some cassava flour to make our roux. So a roux is just a combination of flour and some kind of fat, and it's used to thicken sauces. So when you're making like a typical cheese sauce for mac and cheese, this is how you would start with a roux. Now after this has had a minute or two to cook and bubble, we're gonna go ahead and add just a little bit of spice. We'll do just a touch of cinnamon. We don't wanna go too heavy on these, it's just kind of a subtle background note. Do a little bit of cloves. And then one of my favorite ingredients in a cream sauce is nutmeg. So I'm using some freshly grated nutmeg, but you can just use dried ground nutmeg as well. And then we're also gonna add some fresh sage to that to really infuse the flavor with some of this really herbal, kind of earthy, aromatic flavor. And this will just be like a nice contrast to a lot of the sweet flavors that we just added. Those sweet and savory flavor combinations are some of my favorite to create. I think it just adds so much complexity and interest to a dish. And also, you know, we're also still kind of infusing that ghee with more flavor from the spices and from the sage as well. All right, so that's nice and fragrant. We're gonna go ahead and add our liquid. So I'm gonna be using 1 part chicken bone broth. And when I'm adding liquid to a roux, I like to just add little by little, kind of incorporate it gradually so that it's nice and smooth. There's no clumps happening. And then the other half of the liquid is gonna be coconut milk. I recommend full fat coconut milk for this because you do wanna add, you know, that nice creamy, rich element. And this looks pretty thin right now, but that roux, as it, you know, comes up to a bubble, will thicken the sauce. Okay, now you can see that that's nice and thick and creamy. So we'll go ahead and mix in our squash. This isn't pureed or anything, but our sauce is gonna be pureed, so we don't have to worry about that too much. We're also gonna add our dairy-free cream cheese and our nutritional yeast. We want to season that up with some pepper and salt. I'm going to do just under a teaspoon for this size of a batch. We'll just get that all nice and mixed together. All right, this is so thick and rich. I am going to actually loosen it with a little bit of my pasta water, so I'm glad that I have this on hand. And then to make sure that this is really nice and velvety smooth, I am gonna blend it with an immersion blender. You can also use your food processor or a high-powered blender, but this just makes it easy. You can do it all in one pan. All right, this looks so nice and thick and velvety smooth. I'm gonna give it a taste before we add it to our pasta to make sure the seasoning is where we want it. Pretty close, just needs a little bit more salt. We gotta remember when we're adding to something that's more bland like pasta, especially with a sauce, you really want it to be pretty well seasoned, and that will balance out once it's on the pasta. All right, so now all we have left to do is toss this with our macaroni. And this looks so beautiful. Look how delicious and creamy that looks. All right, all we have left to do is plate this up. Oh, this looks so delicious. I love these fall colors and fall flavors, and I love that sweet and savory contrast. Gonna sprinkle these with some of our yummy crispy shallots. And for just a little pop of color and extra herbal flavor, we'll just sprinkle on a little bit of torn fresh sage leaves. Isn't that pretty? This is such a nice fall side, or you can make it a dinner by adding your favorite protein. We just had this for dinner last week with some rosemary roast chicken. It was perfect, so delicious. So let's give it a taste and see how we did. Oh my gosh, yum. It's creamy, it's sweet, flavorful, savory. It has some serious comfort food vibes. The crispy shallots add so much flavor and just that perfect hit of crunch. It's one of those recipes that tastes like super indulgent comfort food, but it's also food that your body is gonna thank you for. You can find the full recipe for this pumpkin sage macaroni and cheese in the video description below. And if you're looking for more easy, delicious, thyroid-friendly recipes like this one, don't miss my Thyroid30 cookbook. It's packed with 100 of my best gluten-free, dairy-free, anti-inflammatory recipes, along with my proven Thyroid30 system to help you eat well, live well, and feel well. You can scan the QR code on the screen to order your copy, or just click the link in the video description below. All right, friend, thanks for cooking with me today. I'm wishing you warmth, comfort, and a nourishing season ahead. Keep on thriving, and I'll see you next time.